Hey everyone, welcome to Cashrules, where we talk all things business, all things real estate. My name is Nick Foley, and with the man, the myth, the legend, Nick Gilmore. How you doing, my man?
Foley, I missed you.
It's been a while. Haven't seen you since last year. Worst dad joke on the planet, man. How are things going, brother?
No, they're good. Really good, man. Just got through Christmas, got through a busy season for us, and kind of slows down now a little bit. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that we're going to get into the more business talk today. I got a lot of questions for you. We can go back and forth a little bit. But what do you what do you do? Like, what do you guys do over there at with not only your portfolio but with like Gilmore's Meats and stuff? You're busy during the holidays, like a lot of businesses are, and especially with your industry. But what do you do January and February type thing, the slower months? To combat the slower time revenue wise, but also people in the door wise.
Well, I mean, you need to be creative. So that's really when the entrepreneur in this type of a business shines through, because what are we going to do? We're not getting as many people through the door. There's not as many people barbecuing, and obviously that's like a huge portion of our business. So are we doing ready to go meals? Are we, offering barbecue chickens? Are we doing salads? Are we, different things that are going to complement other arms of the business, or what we really look to, and, just focus on our core values. So customer service, quality, and try to get everybody dialed in and ready for the summertime when it really ramps up. But just be creative and try to offer a really good product that the customer is going to like.
Let me ask you this, Nick. Do you have like any products or services that you have at Gilmore's now that you or your partner, your brother, came up with during the slow time? The reason why I ask this is because I know you quite well. Obviously, we're good buddies, but I'm just curious because there's a lot of times where entrepreneurs it's quiet. And you had a heck of a Christmas, you know what I mean? Like, you're really busy. I know that I was at Gilmore's in the one in Belleville. So, and so I'm just curious, like, what do you do to combat against the complacency? And if so, like, any ideas or anything like that came out of your January, February kind of slow time?
Well, I mean, when you become complacent, or when things start to, especially after you've been in business for a little while and it's running, right? So you have enough revenue and enough money to keep going. It's harder to get yourself to do these things because you don't have to. So, like us, we're constantly growing and we're constantly pushing, and I'm constantly putting myself in a position where I have to reinvent because the staff's growing. We're growing the business. We're buying the buildings. We're doing all this stuff, and we need more revenue. So I'm always in a position where I'm backing up and thinking, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this money? Because I'm kind of always working ahead. And that's where Jordan and I are different, because Jordan always says, max out what you have right to the very brim. Okay. And then once you're maxed out, then and maxed out in business with the amount of employees you have, then you grow. Whereas my strategy is a little bit different. It looks like this is where I want to be. So let's set up our staff or our store or whatever we need to change, or whatever we need when we're at that revenue point. So let's say we're at 3 million and we want to be at 4 million. So I will set up the store as though it's doing 4 million today. So we'll hire those employees, do this, and set it up as if it's doing $4 million today, and then work like hell to get it there, because you have to, all these things you need to support now, and you're not at that revenue level. So it's a higher risk way to do things. But once you get there, it's not such an explosion of craziness. So, I mean, that's two different ways of doing it, and we've kind of combined the two ways, and it worked well for us. And I guess this season, to answer the second part of that question, ready to go meals are huge, especially obviously with COVID. People, they want something quick, they want something easy. Things are hectic. So that's kind of been a huge part of our business, as well as the online. Like the online part of our meat shops is huge.
I like that though, being prepared, because being prepared for the future, right? Have you ever gotten it? Have you ever gotten into a bit of a circumstance where into a bit of trouble because you were planning like that and you anticipated a bigger growth than there is? I'll give you an example, Nick. I don't. I know we know a little bit about the NHL, watching hockey, whatever, and their salary cap, their flat cap, was supposed to go up $1 million, right? So when when the commissioner talked about it and said, yeah, the salary cap's going to go from say 83 million to 84 million, people started to have that kind of mindset. General managers and Brash had that mindset of like, the money's going to be there. Well, now, with this new, Omicron or Omicron, however you want to say it, and that's not, we're not devaluing it. So before you add us, all right, we know it's bad. All right. So shut up about it. So but the question is, and then with Omicron coming in, revenues, big gates are not happening as prevalent and as quickly as they wanted. And so there is talk that $1 million bump may not go up 1 million. So my question to you is have you ever had to, kind of combat against that and kind of, shift on the go? You're projecting higher than that actually happened, or are you still in that growth stage?
There's a couple of instances in real estate where that's burned me. So similar to what I was talking about, not necessarily in like operating revenue terms, but in like going after a big project and not planning for the small things, i.e. land transfer tax. I think I told you the story when, we bought $2 million worth of student rentals, but I hadn't planned for the land transfer tax that ended up being like, I don't know, 40 or 50 grand. So that was like a last minute expense that you're kind of scrambling to grab. So sometimes those small details I overlook, and that's why Jordan and I complement each other. But it's worked for me. And I guess that's why I like to do it. Like when we first opened the store in Kingston, we were going to do 1,000 square feet. And then we were like, oh, fuck, this is too small. So let's do 2,000 square feet. And then we're like, fuck, maybe we better take 3. And then the 3,000 was actually connected, but it didn't have a firewall to the 4,000. So we had to take all 4,000 square feet. Anyways, the moral of the story is our overhead expense in our first year, we had to do like 1.7 million in revenue just to break even. As a new business in the country where no businesses had really succeeded before. And it was a huge risk, but honestly, it was the best risk I've ever taken. And, I wasn't going to lose. That's the thing. There was nothing that could stop me. I was here every single day, all day. And I say this constantly. And I think that people, they don't really understand. They listen to this motivational bullshit. And it's like, you got to work so hard. You got to do this. You got to do that. And everybody gets all pumped up, rah, rah. And then, they get out there and they're like, oh, this is hard. This is like, I'm tired. Like, so I'm fucking tired. As you know, like, I'm fucking bleeding out in my stomach. My iron levels are like ridiculously low and I need to have an operation. But I mean, that's life, right? You roll with the punches and you have to do it. You got to do what you got to do. And I want to be successful in business, and that requires me to work and be here. So I do that.
Yeah, no, you're on point with it, Nick. I mean, one of the things I read an interesting book over the break called Power by Jeffrey Pfeffer. And it was interesting because what he said was the same kind of thing that you just talked about. He's like, the leadership game is very diluted in practices, quote unquote, best practices of people being like, you need to do this and you need to speak this way and be kind and this is the way you get to success. And what's happening, what he, after some research, what he's realized is that's not the case at all. These people that are writing these books, they're legacy books. These old CEOs like Jack Welch, he passed away now, but he was the CEO of General Electric, and guys like that are saying that these are the way you could create a culture. But when you interview the people that are actually living in that culture as a business, they were like, that's not how it was at all. And a lot of people are devaluing the power plays and the big moves they had to make in order to get to the top. Right. And so there is a balance. I do think there is a balance between being ruthless and doing what you have to get to the top, but also, being kind along the way. However, I think you're right with the work and doing what it needs to be done in order to get it accomplished. Before we go any further, though, Nick, I think that's a really interesting story and a really good example for our listeners on creativity. And I know I'm kind of going back a bit, but you talked about that land transfer. I remember that story. It was off air. We did not tell it on the podcast yet. And you told it to me a couple months ago. We were just shooting the breeze on the phone. Shoot the breeze. Does anybody even use that comment anymore? We were shooting the breeze together, him and I, Nick and I, and that's what we do. We shoot the breeze. We don't shoot the shit. We don't just chat. We shoot the breeze. So we were shooting the breeze, and you did tell me about that story. But I think it'd be really good for our listeners how you circumnavigated that and how it could have been quite the miscalculation. If you're okay, comfortable sharing it.
Yeah. No, it was. I think Jordan had just come in as a partner. So this was a few years back, and we were buying some student rentals right down in the Queens district. And we weren't just buying like one, we bought 3 houses. And anybody who's familiar with the Kingston downtown area, it's expensive down there, obviously, because it's, where everybody wants to be. It's right in the Queens student rental hub where kids want to rent's top dollar, et cetera, et cetera. So we had, we made a deal with a gentleman I know to purchase some rentals. So anyways, we get to the end, blah, blah, blah. And the lawyers will always call you like the day or two before, and they'll say, okay, Nick, bring a check for X amount of dollars because, that's the difference between what the mortgage is and what you owe this gentleman. So they call me and they say, okay, bring a check for, I can't even remember what it was for, like $250,000, because it had to cover the down payment and the lawyer fees. But what I didn't calculate in there was the land transfer tax. So I only had a certain amount put aside, and I don't keep a whole bunch of liquid capital that I can just deploy at any time because it's all tied up working.
Well, why would you? Yeah, exactly.
It's like I ended up I was scrambling because I'm like, I got to come up with this fucking money all of a sudden. And, I couldn't, I think it was like, when it might've been a Thursday, like at noon, and the deal closed on the Friday. So anyways, we had to like pool some money together, and Jordan put some in, I put some in, we had a credit card, and we like managed to just get enough together and put the deal together. And then obviously, the next week we withdrew some money out of other areas, but it was a good lesson to me, because had the deal have been like 3 million or 3.5 million, it would have been a different story, and we wouldn't have been able to close. And, could we have navigated that situation? Of course we could have, but if the guy we were buying them off of wasn't such a good guy, he could have sued us. So,
well, and it's a good lesson in creativity, right? Like, and I think we've talked at length on this podcast in particular about the amount of hoops and sometimes the creativity that you have to go at. And I tell you, I mean, I was saying this the other day. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I said, I wish if I would have known Nick to the level that I know him now. We've always kind of known of each other. There would not a question in my mind. I would have put an offer in on an apartment building that was up for sale in my hometown a few months ago. And the guy said, he goes, well, why? What would that have been the difference? I said, because I didn't realize when I saw the price tag of it, I was like, oh, that's out of my realm. I wouldn't have the 20%. I didn't know what it was, but I realized that there's seller take back mortgages and things like that a lot of people like to take, right? You come up with like it could be 90% funded by the seller because they're just getting a monthly draw on you, and they're circumnavigating the capital gains tax that they would have had, right? So the reason why I say that is not every deal is like that. Sometimes people just they want to draw. Sometimes you got to liquidate and go to buy something else. But if people are trying to get out of that game, that's an option. Anyway, we could talk about that at a different time. But my point is that, you know, that kind of creativity is important, I think, and having that kind of stuff. So
especially in startup, like, because you'll hear everybody will always say no, you can't do it. It's too much, or these are the rules. This is what I fucking love. These are the rules. So you'll go to the bank and they'll be like, okay, well, so it's a multifamily apartment. It's more than 4 or 5 units. Okay, well, you need 35% down because it's considered a commercial residential property or a commercial multifamily. So it's like, oh, well, I don't have 35% down. Game over. Wrong. This is where I did things differently and how I got ahead, because I didn't take no for an answer. I figured out other ways to do it. I was lucky to be surrounded with some guys who took time and helped me, but I didn't just take no. I said, fuck it. And I went out and figured a way to do it because I wanted it. I wanted it so fucking bad. And I think we've said it before. You need to want something. Okay. And this goes more for people coming from like nothing or a startup or whatever. You need to want something more than you want to breathe. When you want it as bad or more than you want to breathe, which is more than anything, that's when you will fucking find out a way to get it.
Yeah, that's a really good. I mean, that's a really intense way of putting it, but it does drive it home, right? I heard an interesting story about, you know, something similar where the guy had his mentor, right? Have you heard that story before? A guy had a mentor and he took him out to the water and he goes, "I want to be just like you. I want to be just like you." And he says, "Okay." And he put it. The guy was in a suit and he put them down in the water, like he was drowning them. And he put them out. He goes, "What'd you do that for?" And he's like, "You got to want success as much as you want to breathe," right? Just like you were saying. So yeah, it's a really good metaphor analogy there. We're off to a torrid start here to start the new year. Nick, man, do you guys want to take some questions or what?
Yes.
All right, let's get at it. Oh, shout out to Ash Bear. Do you notice that on the graphic there, she put question period underneath the Cashrules there, and I didn't notice that before Christmas. I could be wrong, but I don't think that was there before Christmas. Anyway, always talk about creativity. That's a nice callback, and talk about always working, always innovating. We're grateful for her production skills. Absolutely. Otherwise, it's just two balding men talking without Ash. So here we go. What are your tips to overcoming adversity? Question number 1. What are your tips for overcoming adversity? I know you've experienced, lots of people have experienced adversity. You've experienced adversity, Nick. What are things that you do to overcome that kind of thing? And I'll chime in on this one as well.
Well, I guess this is a good time to tell a story. And I just did an interview about a circumstance where when I was young, I was always into trouble and always dabbling with the wrong things. And I found myself in a situation where I got arrested one of many, many times. And I was pepper sprayed by the police and they roughed me up fairly good, which whatever. But yeah, I was sitting in a jail cell. I was covered in this pepper spray. It was burning, right? Like it burns your skin. And I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing? Right? Like this was one of the later times when I had gotten into trouble, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, what are you doing with your life? Like, how would your mom feel about this? You know? And I had gotten into trouble. I had a record. I had, hadn't done anything really with my life yet. I was so far behind. My friends were getting done university and doing all this other stuff. And I was just, mixing in with this negativity, going down a terrible, terrible path. And, I had really stacked the deck against myself. And it's not like, I had a crazy amount of adversity growing up, because, you know, we are in Canada, thank God, and we're, you know, lucky enough to be in the greatest country in the world. But I had stacked up some adversity against myself, and it was you know, to most people, I would say to most people, it would seem like it would be impossible to turn your life around. That's how bad it was. So I was sitting there covered in pepper spray, and I'm like, what in the fuck is going on? And that's when kind of, and it didn't happen overnight, but that's when the switch went off in my head, and I'm like, something's got to fucking change. Something has to change. And, you know, my lawyer, actually at the time, who became a buddy of mine, Peter Court, he was like a huge influence to me because he always was like, had my back, and he was in my corner, and he never judged me. He always saw me for me. And I remember asking him when we opened up the store in Belleville again, I was like, because him, as like in his job, he's a criminal lawyer. He's always surrounded by like negativity and charges and like angry people. And I'm like, why do you do it? Like, what's the point of you doing what you do? And he said, because of guys like you, meaning because I turned it around. And, you know, he's a huge reason to this day why I want to be as massively successful as I can be to make him proud, because he took a chance on me and he got me out of trouble and always believed in me. And, you know, he's one guy that I have all the time in the world for. But overcoming adversity, you just need to stick with your plan. You need to have a plan. You need to have a goal, and you need to stick with it. And if your problem is, you know, getting in trouble or getting in fights or doing bad things, you need to eliminate yourself from that environment and those people, you know, and put your focus on your goal and stay with it every fucking day. Because unfortunately, it's not just like you change overnight. You got to build these habits into your daily routine. So this is what I'm doing. I'm getting up. I'm doing the workout. I'm you know, going for whatever, reading a book. These things, you build them into your habit, and then it becomes a long-term habit of yours, and, you know, your life slowly starts to change.
I think that's a really good example. And I mean, you know, you're sitting in the jail, and you're full of mace, and you realize it could have been either way. It could have been blaming everybody for being in that situation, or you internalize it and do a little bit of reflection when it comes to that. And, you know, and also with that, you know, I know Pete quite well, and you know, yeah, he's a good man. So couldn't ask for a better mentor. Mm-hmm. I would also say the same thing, Nick. I think that when it comes to adversity, the first thing that you need in order to overcome it, one of the things that I would also say is allow yourself a little grace. You know, and not every day is going to be a perfect day. It's not always going to be easy. I think that you touched upon it. You touched upon a lot of the things that I was going to talk about when it comes to, you know, finding that direction that you want to go. You know, read a book, journal, workout, things like that. So find a plan where it is that you want to go, and then just, you know, small steps in it over a long period of time lead to amazing results. They really do, right? And I'm a huge believer in that. As we start to take our clothes off here, I'm a big believer in that, and that people, you know, if you start deciding like today's the day that I'm going to, you know, make the best decision I can for this day, for today, for right now, then it makes it easier, right? And, you know, several years ago, I as you know, I cycled across Canada, and every single people ask me like, what did you have to tell yourself? It's such a huge astronomical. It took me like 96 days to do. And I always said to him, I said, I always had to just get to the next spot. When I was leaving Nanaimo, when I was leaving Victoria, my job wasn't to get to St. John's, Newfoundland that day. My job was to get to Nanaimo. And then after Nanaimo, my job was to get to Vancouver and Abbotsford. You know, my job from there was to get to Hope, and so on and so forth. So once you start to look at that, you start to be like, okay, I'm sitting in I'm at rock bottom. I've got mace all over me, and I'm in a jail cell, and I'm sitting next to, you know,
Bubba.
Brutus. Yeah, yeah. sit next to these guys, and I don't want to be here. What's one thing that I can do better tomorrow? And you just mentioned it, right? Take yourself out of the situations, right? Maybe it's drinking more water, drinking less alcohol, doing less drugs, whatever it is. So allow yourself a little grace to understand that, hey, listen, you got this far. Now let's start to turn it around a little bit. But that's a really, really good one. You had an interesting story about a bear. Did you tell that story?
No, I think the bear. I was fighting the bear, and the bear maced me. I think that's the way it went, but I can't remember exactly.
Can't remember the bear mace story. Interesting. All right, I'm with you on it. All right, next one. How do you balance between long-term and short-term financial goals, Nick?
So, short-term I think without short-term financial goals, there is no long-term financial goals, because you just said it perfectly, and I'm sure you saw me like affirming what you were saying by nodding. But a long-term financial goal is built up by several small-term financial goals. So I want to be a fucking billionaire. Well, you don't just become a billionaire. First, you have to become 100,000-aire, then a millionaire, then a fucking 100-millionaire, then a billionaire. So how do you get to these small steps? And it's funny how it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If we're talking about money, if we're talking about riding your bike across the country, if we're talking about getting in shape, it's all the same, people. These are all the same fucking concepts, and all the same rules apply. Be consistent, make it happen, and pick small little increments that you build by. Because I don't even know what the pyramids weren't built overnight or whatever the fuck they say. Like, it's so small. Like, when I was a teenager, I thought it was like, if I was where I am now, I would be like a fucking kabillionaire. So like, me to my younger self, I'm like awesome, right? But me to my current self, I've worked so hard to get here and done so many, like, it's been such small increment by increment by increment, that now it's like, okay, well, I deserve to fucking be here because I've put in all this work. It's not like it just happened overnight and I'm like, oh my God, look where I am. So you get to the point, but you've worked so hard to get there. It's like, holy fuck.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. I think financial goals, like long-term, like you said, you have to have short-term goals in order to be long-term. And I think it does start mentally. It starts mentally. Like, I think you're right. I think for the first time, you're realizing there's a couple things I'll say. Number one is you do deserve to be there. And I think that, and what does that mean? So what that means is that it's a mindset game for us. You know what I mean? And once you start to realize, that you are deserving of the buildings, you are deserving of the cash flow, you are deserving of the efforts that you're putting in every day and the opportunities that you're affording yourself because of the efforts you're putting in every day. It's amazing what that changes with your mindset, right? I heard an interesting story. I was actually myself. I was doing I'm doing some further education, and I said I always question myself when it comes to academia. And someone said, you belong here just as much as any of us, right? Like, you have all the background, all the credentials, all the life experience. There's no reason why you shouldn't be here. And it's kind of made me realize, yeah, you know what? You're right. You're right. And so I try to apply that knowledge with, who I surround myself, guys like yourself, who are really successful, other people in my life that are really successful. And I try to throw myself into the game. And how do you do that? Second thing I would say is education, right? Like, I like podcasts just as much as the next person, but the only podcast that I listen to these days, is real estate podcast. That's it. From people who I know, who I've done the research for, and I know are worth, like lots and lots and lots of money because of the different types of things that they have. Right now, they don't have the same aspirations as me. Perhaps not. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. But the reality of it is I'll only listen to podcasts that are relevant to me and where I want to go in my life when it comes to, my entrepreneurial, real estate business and ideology. Right. So, surround yourself with that. The second thing, or the third thing I'll say too, Nick, and I heard this from another mentor of mine, was you cannot save yourself. You can't save yourself to wealth. And he had a really good point. You have to have your money working for you, right? Like, you can't save. And I know there's all kinds of things like, you go to Tim Hortons and if you buy it 7 times in a row, you'll get your 8th one free. Well, you saved yourself $1.85. Great job. But you putting $10 away every night, every day, that's great. That's going to give you, $3,600 and some odd dollars at the end of the year. However, you're not going to be able to save yourself to wealth without making your money work for you, right? And so the importance is, with the compounding, interest and things of that nature, like putting your money where it needs to be working for you in the best capacity. But just, hoarding it, like we talked about inflation a couple of episodes ago, hoarding it is not going to get you to where you need to go. And you're not going to meet your financial goals, right? So giving yourself understanding those kind of principles, that short will get you long.
And leverage.
Right? Yeah, short will get you long. Make leverage work for you. We already talked about this. We already called out what's his name, Dave Ramsey. He ain't answering. But if you want to have wealth, you need to listen to what Nick's saying here and use debt as leverage, and make your money work for you, because inflation's eating it up if it's not.
Inflation is, your cash is depreciating. We said it before, but cash depreciates. If you can buy a T-bone steak today for $10, you can't buy it for $10 in a year, which means that $10 is worth less in a year than it is today. So that money sitting in the bank, it's depreciating.
100%. Get it working for you. That's how you do it. How do you evaluate risk, and when do you know the time to take risks?
Well, I mean, when you're starting out, okay, when you are starting out and you are that grassroots entrepreneur, you're that person who's hungry, but you don't have a lot, and you need to use some bank money, or you need to get some money from local government, small business agency, or whatever you need to do. So when you're starting out as a grassroots entrepreneur, your risks are going to be a lot higher, a lot greater, and they're going to be there's more of them in terms of what you're doing. But when you are growing, it's not like, okay, now I have money and I need less money, because you're taking larger risks. So maybe at the start you needed $100,000 loan to start your business. Well, that was a lot to you when you were worth nothing. But then, okay, now we want to buy the building and it's worth $5 million. So now we've got to buy this building. Well, maybe we're worth more, but relative to the amount that we're borrowing, it's the same. So you're always going to be taking risks as an entrepreneur. They're calculated risks, but you're always going to be taking risks. And like I always say, if you're in the growth stage, there's no cash flow. And if you're in the cash flow, there's no growth. You can't have both. So when you're growing, there's risk, there's no cash flow, because the cash flow is coming back and being deployed out. The evaluating risks, I mean, you sent me that worksheet that was a few months ago, I think, two or 3 months ago, and that was a great way to do it. And maybe I'll let you take it from there on that one.
What sheet were you referring to?
So when you're taking a risk, it was like a checklist or a new venture. So if I'm going to do something, then it needs to check these boxes, like
serve and deprive.
Yeah.
So no, I know what you're talking about now, brother. So one of the things that I always do, I found that really kind of served me, was if I'm looking to get into a business venture, or if I'm looking to do something, I'll write down all the things that serve me and all the things that serve me in this venture. And basically making a checklist, and then I weigh them against the depriving me. What are the things that it's not going to work for? What are the things what are the pitfalls that could happen? What are the things that are going to jump out at that I'm not going to expect, perhaps? And just kind of sit down and really write it out and go through the checklist of what I need to accomplish. I really think that those kind of things, and whether it's that sheet that I give you, Nick, or the sheet that I work on, or whatever it is, I think the simple act of taking a breath and really mapping it out and writing it out is what's going to make people successful when it comes to this kind of stuff. So one of the things that I read the other day, Reid Hoffman. So Reid Hoffman started LinkedIn,
Yeah.
And very, very successful tech entrepreneur. And he's got a podcast called Masters of Scale. Good podcast if you're into learning all things great about business. But one of the things that he says, taking the leap to become an entrepreneur is the biggest leap. It's like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and building the parachute on the way down, right? And I think I think he's right? I think he has that mindset of like, that same kind of you didn't know, you knew where you wanted to go when you were sitting in that jail cell, but you didn't know how you were definitely going to get there. Although you did know you had to start, right? And then you take this big leap and you get into, the meat business, and you start, now you have, 2, 3, 4, 3 or 4 stores, right? 3 stores. Yeah. And then you have all this real estate and you're a real estate entrepreneur and a social media influencer and things of that nature. So you don't know what it's going to look like, but you just know you know where you want to go, right? And you build that parachute on the way down as you're going through it. So best way to evaluate risk is go through the checklist of what's serving you, what's depriving you, how are you going to make this deal work. Take that breath, though. Whatever it is you decide to do, take that breath.
And it's hard. These things are like, people think that they're just going to have this epiphany and it's going to be so clear to them. But trust me, it's never clear. It's not like I'll look at something and I'm like, okay, this is a no fucking brainer. It's definitely going to work. Like that's not the way it is at all. You're looking at things and it's like, okay, this could work, but I'm going to need to do X, Y, and Z. And this could go wrong, or this is a variable, how are we going to combat? Like, there's so many things that you need to think about when it comes to making a decision, but understand that there's always the risk because there's never like a clear path. So if you're somebody who needs like everything to line up perfectly and everything to be like fucking exactly the way you want it to be and feel right, it's never, ever, ever, ever going to be that way. And that's cool if that's the way you are, but don't fucking get into, like, I almost partnered with a guy like that on one project and it would have been a fucking catastrophe because he was like, there's this saying, it's called paralysis by analysis. And basically, like you're just looking at everything way, way, way too much. Sometimes you just got to jump in the pool and fucking swim.
Yeah, no, and that's a really good analogy, man. I've heard that saying before, and paralysis by analysis, and it's just you're just trying to mitigate and be like, oh, how do I make this a perfect opportunity? There isn't one, right? And I think and one of the things that I'll say to this, and I think you'll probably echo it, is you rise and fall to the level of the decisions you have to make. Right? Your success is predicated to the levels of decisions that you have to make in your life. Yeah. So people ask, what do you mean by that, Nick? Well, here's the thing. If I'm a practitioner, right? If I'm a solopreneur and my job is to go around and speak and do things like that, and whatever it is, money in, money out, my time, I get money back. And I am sitting at my place and I'm not doing anything to innovate and it dries up and I'm not getting as many, talks or speeches, whatever, then you got to be thinking to yourself, okay, well, I'm not going to I'm at fault here because I got complacent with thinking that money was always going to come in the door. Or you're wondering, why are you not, growing or scaling your business or anything like that? Well, because the only decisions that you're making is, am I going to accept this gig or not? Yes or no. Right. And you look down the road and you see your, a friend of yours or whatever, whoever, and they have, all these different things. They've got the vacation home, whatever they got, they whatever they wanted to do. And you wonder, well, why are they so successful and I'm not? And you realize, oh, it's because they run, 2 or 3, grocery stores, meat shops, things like that. Although they have, millions and millions of dollars in assets and real estate and real estate entrepreneurs and things of that nature. Right. And the reality of it is it comes down to, you will rise and fall to the level of the decisions that you have to make in your life. And I think that if you're honest with yourself, most people aren't, but you'll know where you are in your life based on how difficult your decisions are made.
Most people, I'm so glad you fucking said that because most people, they aren't honest with themselves. So many people listening right now, I'm telling you, listen to me. You're not being honest with yourself because you think you're fucking working so hard or you're putting in your 40 hours or even maybe 50 hours ooh la la, and you're working so fucking hard. But unfortunately, it's not enough, because if you want more, you got to be going after that motherfucker who's working 100 hours a week. Like, you got to be going against me. And I wouldn't want to go against me because I'm fucking crazy. I'm working, I'm bleeding in my stomach, and I'm working right now. You know what I mean? It's I'm kind of making a joke about it, and it's health is no joke, but unfortunately, you know, I've had to do it. But these are the sacrifices that I've made. And I'm trying to hammer that home to you guys. Like, working really hard, or thinking you're working hard just because you go to the fucking office and sit there and sit on social media, that's not working hard. You know, that's being a fucking jerk off. So if you and fucking Barb and fucking Debbie go to the fucking office and stand around the fucking water cooler, talk about fucking John the cleaner, how he didn't sweep up enough, and then fucking go home and think you're kicking ass at work and complain you're not fucking paid enough, and why you don't have a fucking Maserati, give me a break.
There's a reason. There's certainly a reason for it. So you make the bigger decisions. If you have the bigger decisions, you have to take the bigger risk. You know, that's how you get the most success. Last question before we get on to the last section. What do we have here? Okay. So here's the thing. I am going to ask you this one question, and then I'll talk about the rant time. So staying focused instead of comparing yourself to another business. What is the best way to do that?
That is a fucking good question, and here's why. How to stay focused on your business. So what you want to do, because most people, okay, if you're in business, you're out, you're fucking looking at other people's, what are they doing? What are they on the Facebook page? And what do they have on special? What are they doing? How are they doing this? But I can tell you one thing with the utmost certainty. We, as a business, and one of my mentors told me, he said, pay attention to what you're doing. Don't pay attention to what everybody else is doing. And because I used to do that. But if I watch exactly what we do on social media, and I watch obviously where the market is going, where the trends are going, because that's what you want to follow. I don't want to follow fucking Joe's Butcher Shop or fucking Johnny's fucking real estate, because they're doing what everybody else is doing. I want to follow where the industry is going so that I can stay ahead of that curve, always be innovating within the store, and maybe garner new customers with this innovation. Plus, when the market starts to transition, we're already there. So it's not like, okay, now we need to make all these knee-jerk decisions in order to get to that position, because we've already been slowly, you know, making that curve the whole way. So stay focused on you, and be familiar with the market, but fuck similar businesses in the industry. Work with them, you know, collaborate.
Yeah, a couple of things I'll add to that. And I think that's just to reiterate, collaboration is not a bad thing. But I think that if you're going to look at other people's social media and things like that, like you're right, you're 100%. Don't worry about what they're doing down the street. Look at everything through the lens of learning. The only reason why I would follow, the only reason why I look at your stuff, Nick, on you're my friend and an interesting guy and I want to support, but I also want to learn, right? And so the reason why I follow other presenters or people that are in real estate investing or anything like that business is because I look through it through a lens of learning, right? And I think that if you can look at everything through the lens of just like humble inquiry, then the reality is that you're not too concerned about what buddy down the road's doing, because you really don't care, like you mentioned, right? Work with them. And another thing I'll add to that as well is so often people are like, oh, I got an idea, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell anybody. I don't want people to take it. I'm going to tell you right now, 100% of the time, when you tell people your idea, there's two things. One, no one's going to take it.
Yeah.
Two, because it might suck, but also because people don't have, they're so involved in it's called spotlight syndrome. We are so worried about what we look like, right? We talked about the thing, and I've got like this big forehead and all this, like, all these lights, if you're watching us on YouTube. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, people are going to care. They're going to be like, oh, that guy's disgusting. But nobody gives a shit. They want to know the content is. They don't care what you're looking. We have spotlight. It's spotlight syndrome where we think that everything is going to be revolving around us. If you have an idea, I would suggest to you that you go out there and you talk to people about that idea, because that's how I met Nick. I knew that he was in the real. We knew of our families knew of each other for years. But to actually to be in this position that we're in now, I did that because I reached out on social media because I thought he was doing some cool stuff, and he thought the same. And I asked him some real estate questions, and here we are. Friendship was formed, and now we're in this podcast, so on and so forth. And I suspect that we'll be doing some deals together in the future as well. So my point is, ask that question, right? Get out there. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, just to your point about the reaching out, because I had reached out to you as well. And it's funny because you were doing something that nobody else was doing. So like where we come from, anyone who's listening that's kind of outside of the realm of, Ontario, we come from a small town. So like going on social media and doing what we're doing right now, it's weird to people. Like this isn't normal. People would sit probably at our hometown. They'll probably watch this and say, these guys are fucking idiots. Who do they think they are? Because that's the type of mentality that's been programmed into us. I say us because I'm from there from a young age. And if it doesn't fit with what everyone else is doing, then it's stupid. And when I saw Nick doing it, boom, that clicks in because that's how I'm programmed. But fortunately enough, I've trained my mind to be able to step out of that and say, okay, now let's actually analyze this as something that's real instead of just having a preconceived notion from my small-minded bullshit that's in my head. So when I really started peeling the layers back of what he was doing, I was like, holy fuck, this is so interesting. This is so beneficial. This is so cool. Like what he's doing is, it's different, but it's helping people. And Nick's not like I don't really know how to put this in a delicate way, but he's not like a hoity-toity fruitcake guy who's like, he's played high level hockey and he's one of the guys and he was doing this. And that's what really kind of pulled me into, the benefits of thinking outside the box and really having to second guess everything that you think.
I appreciate that, man. And that's the thing. I think if you just come from an angle of service, I texted it or I put it out there today. I know you and I commented on it, is that we live to the level of our service, right? Yeah. And and I appreciate that. But it's funny it's always your buddies that have the most to say, right? Like it's always the guys that, and you love them for it and you joke. But I always respond. Anything that everybody ever wants to make fun of the things that I do and things, there's two things I always say. I'd rather be the creator than the critic. And that usually gets people to like whatever. And then I always say, it's a Walt Whitman quote that I got from, I think it was like Ted Lasso, is I would rather be, it's better to be curious than it is to be judgmental, right? I'd rather know what you're doing and go behind the scenes and learn more about you than it is to be judgmental because you're on here trying to do things that are different than, posting pictures of your, of your food, or you know what I mean? And that's it. Nothing wrong with that, by the way, for those people that are listening that post pictures of their food, but you know what I'm saying? That's the norm. So
yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right, man. You ready for a little bit of rant time here?
Yes.
Yeah, here we go. All right. This has been a fast moving episode. We're already out 50 minutes. All right. So what does it mean to you to go all in your business and in life?
What a good way to fucking top this episode off.
Yeah.
After I've been kind of touching on this soul, I've been tap dancing around that the whole time.
Absolutely. It's almost like we know each other.
Going all in. So listen to me, people. This is so fucking important. If you want to be in business, okay, and you're not like a second generation or third generation person who's been handed a business, and I'm not saying that you can't run it or that whatever, but I'm speaking to the true grassroots startup entrepreneur who doesn't have a whole shit ton of cash behind him to start. If that sounds familiar, then listen to what I'm going to fucking say. You need to be all in all the time, always working at your fucking business. Okay? Because nobody cares if you succeed except you, right? You think everybody's got your back and you think people truly care about you. But I've said this before and I will say it again. Nobody gives a fuck about you. There's a very select few of your close friends who truly do care, who truly care, and a couple of your family who truly care. Okay? But it's very, very, very small amount of people who actually do. And the rest of the people don't give a flying fuck. You know, if you died, they would go to your funeral and get drunk and use it as an excuse. Because the amount that people care is they, like you said, it's spotlight syndrome. So you need to care about your business and your success more than you care about anything else. And when you can do that, and when you can truly put everything in, and I mean put all of your effort, and you need to be honest. You can't say you're putting it all in and you're not. You got to put all of your fucking resources into making this succeed. And when you do that, I promise you, people, I promise you, I guarantee with 100% certainty, if you do that and you have a roadmap and you have an end goal and you put all of it in, I guarantee you will succeed.
I'm Nick Foley. This is Beck Gilmore. This is Cash Rules.